We're going to get started. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today for Heat Pumps 101. Today's event is co-hosted by Environment America Research and Policy Center, Environmental Action, and US PIRG Education Fund. My name is Lisa Frank, and I'm the Executive Director of Environment America Research and Policy Center's Washington Program Office. And we believe clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, healthy lakes, rivers, and forests, sources of energy that don't pollute and never run out. All of this should be the heritage we leave to future generations. So our staff research the issues, educate the public, and win tangible results for a greener future. Recently, we helped build the support needed to pass a historic package of clean energy tax credits that can help Americans, all of us, save energy while reducing global warming pollution 40% by 2030. I'm sure many of you helped in that effort, whether that was by signing petitions, attending town halls, and more. So thank you for that. Today, I am looking forward to discussing a great technology to help us reduce pollution and power our homes more efficiently with clean energy, the heat pump. So we'll cover what a heat pump is, why you should consider getting one, new tax credits for heat pumps, and how to select the right one for you. You'll hear from 3 expert heat pump installers, then a panel of homeowners with heat pumps, and we'll do Q&A. But first, we have a video message to share from Senator John Hickenlooper of Colorado. Since his election to the Senate, he's been an outspoken champion for climate solutions and played a leadership role in securing the package of clean energy investments that includes this tax credit for heat pumps. So let's go to the video from Senator Hickenlooper. Just a moment here while we get this queued up.
Hi everyone, it's Senator John Hickenlooper. Thanks for inviting me to speak with you today. Heat pumps can seem like miracle devices. Their efficiencies are often over 100%, which at first I thought was impossible. But because they pull in heat from the environment, even when it's cold out, they can beat the efficiency of virtually any other household device. Not to mention save you money on your monthly bills. In fact, I speak to you today not just as a US Senator, but as a proud heat pump owner myself. And in Congress, we just passed rebates and tax credits to offset the costs of these systems so more families can make the transition to cheaper, cleaner energy. That was our goal with the Inflation Reduction Act, the single largest climate investment in history. Not only will it help slash carbon emissions by 40% by 2030, it also makes it more cost-effective to begin transitioning away from fossil fuels. But don't just take it from me. Today, you'll be hearing from the experts about how a heat pump works, even in the coldest parts of the world, and how you can help accelerate the clean energy movement and combat climate change. I hope you enjoy it. Take advantage of those rebates. I was too soon.
Okay, thanks to the Senator for that. Next, we're going to hear from experts, installers, who will walk you through all that you need to know about heat pumps. And we're going to start with Rob Bayless of Elephant Energy. And Rob is the Senior Project Manager and Wrangler at Elephant Energy, a climate tech company on a mission to electrify everything, starting with homes. He's passionate about helping people evolve their energy consumption and improving the comfort of their homes in the process. Prior to Elephant Energy, Rob worked in various engineering and consulting roles across the energy economy. Welcome, Rob, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you very much. And sorry, my video is being a little funky today, so I may just keep it on audio so it doesn't glitch out. I think we had some slides, perhaps, to share. Awesome. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Rob Bayless. I work for Elephant Energy. We're based in Boulder, Colorado, and we work along the Colorado Front Range right now. And we work with people to electrify their homes and help them make their homes more comfortable. So I think we can go to the next slide. Everybody here kind of knows what a large impact people's homes can have on climate change and their carbon emissions. That 37% or so of emissions kind of come from the home in the U.S. So these are big things that we can kind of tackle. And next slide. And so there are so many things that go into it, and we'll just flip to the next slide quickly. And Elephant is kind of working with people to kind of take some of the big bites out of their home, helping people electrify their furnace, their water heater, their gas range, and install electric vehicles. But what we're really going to talk about quickly is heat pumps, which I think are on the next slide. Moving heat around, as Senator Hickenlooper said, very, very efficient because they're not having to create heat. Even in the winter, they can pull heat from outside and move it inside. And likewise in the summer, they can pull the heat from inside the house and move it outside. So again, everybody hopefully has a little bit of familiarity and background knowledge. And so we were told to keep things short. So I was just going to talk quickly on the next slide about the difference between a couple different types of heat pumps. Lots of people have heard ducted versus ductless. In Colorado, many of the systems are set up to be centrally ducted. That means you have registers in most of the rooms, and you have a single furnace or AC unit that pushes air throughout the house. That's not true everywhere. Places with older systems, they have heat oil, they have boilers. And what do you do in that case? It's possible that maybe you use a mini split system, and that's what's on this slide. There's several mini split heads that have the refrigerant taken from outside the condenser, kind of moved through pipes to an individual head that's on the wall, on the ceiling, on the floor, in each room. And that allows you like great zonal control, which means you can kind of, have it be different temperatures in different rooms. So, we think that's a really great option for people that don't have centrally ducted HVAC systems. It's really a very cool technology and great application. So I think there's one more slide, and then I'll pass the baton, and people are very welcome to ask more questions. So this is a centrally ducted setup that you see the picture, and it's really just a replacement for your furnace. So who would use a ducted versus a ductless? There's some bullets here. If you have ducts, obviously, a centralized unit makes a lot of sense. If it reaches everywhere in your house, if they're in good repair, if you're okay kind of controlling it from a single point of control, if any of those aren't true, maybe a ductless system is for you, and that is really great technology and great options that you could have, a number of heads in different parts of your house, all from a single condenser. And again, we're installing these in Colorado. This past winter, we had weather down to minus 18 degrees, which was really cold for Denver. And, we had dozens of heat pumps, cranking out heat and keeping people warm. So I know it told us to be a little conscious of time, so I'm happy to kind of stop there and pass it on. But please feel free to let us know if you have more questions, and I'll try to respond to a few things in the chat if that's helpful as well.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, and we will do a full Q&A where people will be able to submit questions via the Q&A function once we finish hearing from everyone today. Thank you so much. Next, I want to introduce Jane, who is the CEO and co-founder of Harvest Thermal, which is focused on helping our homes transition away from gas comfortably, safely, affordably, and at scale. And Harvest Thermal systems combine high-performance heat pumps with thermal storage to deliver all your heating and hot water needs while reducing emissions by over 90% compared to gas and cutting bills up to 48%. And Harvest Thermal currently partners with over 25 local contractors to deploy Harvest systems in homes, and they're adding more each month. Jane has had leadership roles at 5 different technology startups, including solar company SolFocus, energy storage company Enerval, and quantum tech company Quintessence Labs before founding Harvest Thermal. She's a civil engineer by training and has a PhD in fluid mechanics from Cambridge University. And most importantly, she's had a passion for clean energy for as long as she can remember. So Jane will share some advice with us on how to work with contractors to get a heat pump. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for the introduction. And hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be part of this discussion. So, Lisa, as you're saying, Harvest Thermal, our mission is to help homes transition to clean, affordable, and comfortable electric heating and hot water, and together help beat climate change. And why we're doing that, I think Rob was saying before, buildings are responsible for over 1/3 of climate emissions. That's as much or even more than transportation. And it's like the neglected child of climate change. It's something we haven't really dealt with until recently. And when we look at our homes, when you look at the energy pie of what we're using in our homes, 2/3 of the energy used in our homes is for heating and hot water. Most of it is from burning gas or fuel oil in our furnaces and boilers and water heaters. It's a huge challenge, but also a fantastic opportunity, because if we can address the heating and hot water needs of our homes, we're able to really slash the emissions very significantly and have a huge difference. So Harvest Thermal, we are a manufacturer of heat pump systems that deliver all the heating and hot water needs, cutting bills, cutting emissions by 90%, which we're really proud of. And we've been doing this, we founded the company in 2019. We're now fully commercial. We've got partnerships in place now with 30+ contractors, and we've got 60 systems either installed or in the process of being installed. And as Rob was saying, it's about Denver. This last winter was really brutal from a California perspective, and all of our homeowners were toasty warm and really comfortable. Just to summarize what we do, we take one high-performance heat pump, combine it with a thermal battery and control system. That means we can run that heat pump in the middle of the day when it's most efficient and when electricity is cleanest, store that energy in the thermal battery, and deliver it whenever you need it. Now, there are lots of different types of heat pump systems out there. We talked about the mini splits and the central systems, but at the end of the day, if you want to get the system installed, it's complex. I've spoken to many homeowners who want to electrify, and it's complicated. Which systems do you use and which contractors do you use, and how do you make sure the job's going to be well done? And it's not always well done. We've selected, as I said, over 30 contractors to deploy our systems in the Bay Area. So for our homeowners, we're taking that headache away from them. But I know not everybody can do that. And what I really recommend to homeowners thinking about this is to look into, first of all, what resources are available locally in your area that can guide you. I'm sitting in California. There's some great resources. There's something called the Bay Ren list, which is all the contractors in the Bay Area, and you can see which of them have already deployed heat pumps and which of them have deployed heat pump water heaters. 3C Ren has a similar list. Efficiency First California has a similar list. And then there are companies such as Greenworks, which I think is more broad, more national in scope, which can also provide information on contractors who can fulfill a certain job and meet your criteria. So that's a really good place to start. Then, of course, it's speak to that contractor. If you meet a contractor who says don't do heat pumps is a bad idea, I suggest you go and find somebody else, right? Because heat pumps work really well in most climates. Slightly different heat pump for different climates, but they work really well. People are using them up in Canada, up in Norway. We can use them across most of the US. And so basic questions: have they already installed heat pumps? Can they give you a reference of another customer? Do they have knowledge about things like energy efficiency and air sealing? Zach was talking before the call about the benefits of energy efficiency and air sealing, and making sure that you're not just heating the neighborhood. Let's limit it to heating your home before you start to work on those heat pump activities, because at the end of the day, it will save you money. And then we always make the effort to check the license. How long have they been in operation, and how long have they had a license? And that's a real important quality check to make sure that the work you're doing is going to be well done. So those are a few of the thoughts that I had, helping homeowners think about how to get a heat pump system installed. Really looking forward to the questions and to hearing what some of the other speakers are going to be sharing with us in the next few minutes.
Thank you so much, Jane. Lastly, I want to introduce Zachary Turner with Climate Control. He's an in-home estimator for Climate Control, which is a Portland, Oregon-based residential HVAC contractor. That's my hometown. So glad to have you here, Zach. Zach has an architecture and home performance background and uses a home as a system approach to helping people select replacement HVAC systems. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So yes, to speak to picking the best heat pump for your home and your climate, I would suggest that you first think about making yourself a good candidate to have a heat pump, so that you do think about the weatherization and home performance piece first. And I'm talking about air sealing, insulation, drafty doors and windows, shade. So these basics, and this of course applies to any HVAC system that you choose, not just heat pumps, but as a starting point. And then Rob talked a little bit about, heat pumps is a pretty broad, there are a lot of different forms of heat pumps. So there are traditional systems where you might, just similar to a furnace and AC. I think that's an outdated way to do things, but you might have a furnace and a heat pump, and the heat pump is your primary go-to. Or if you're ready to make that leap to all electric, you do a heat pump with an air handler. So the air handler is that box that would replace the furnace. There are the ductless or mini split systems. I prefer the one, I love to work with these ones that do work through your existing ducts, so ducted mini splits. I'd also like to mention a big brother to the mini splits are called VRF, variable refrigerant flow. I call them super splits, but it's something we borrow from the commercial side, and they're pretty sophisticated. So if you have a bigger project, they're a great option. There are even some that will move heat around in a space, pull heat from one space to give to another. So there are a lot of options under this rubric of heat pumps. I work for a pretty traditional outfit, but so I go into homes where people aren't necessarily thinking about heat pumps, but over and over, they're just a great option. The process to arrive at an informed selection and sizing of equipment looks a little like this. My first focus is the home, actually, not right to the mechanical equipment, and how the existing system has been working and what the homeowner's expectations are. So focusing on the home, I'm calculating the correct size of equipment, either for the whole home or for different areas of the home that you want to control separately, that we would call zones. The name of this calculation is called a manual J load calculation, but it's really a thermal model of the house or the different spaces. From there, I'd go into the detailed inspection of the existing mechanical equipment, the ductwork, and yes, that means putting on a suit and physically going and looking at the ducts, because there's a lot of just real simple fixes, and a disconnected duct or really leaky ducts. And looking at the electric panel, making sure there's capacity for these electric systems. Sometimes checking out the airflow to different rooms, because airflow is really critical to these systems working well and meeting people's expectations. So if you have a more difficult home, if you're in a more extreme climate, or if you just want to have a super home, the highest performance, then there's another level where you would actually bring in a company that tests how leaky your home is. So they would do blower door testing, where they seal up the home, they pressurize it, and they find where it's leaky, and the idea would be to fix that. So that's a whole number of steps that really determine that, get you on a path where you can make that selection of what type of heat pump is appropriate, and certainly put in the right size equipment, because it's all very efficient and has this nice range of what it can do, and you want to match with that to what you're actually needing for your climate. So the heat pumps, they come with specific, a number of rating for how many tons it can deliver or BTU capacity. But the reality is a little more nuanced. There's something called a performance curve about, how much at the actual temperatures in your climate, how much heat does it deliver? And so you can look and it will quickly become apparent the difference of that not all heat pumps are the same. There's some that really excel at cold temperatures, or some that will really cover all of you, and you may not need a backup heat source. And so I'm thinking about the right size of heat pump, and also for the extreme situations, what might be needed to make up the difference, if anything is needed at all.
Great. Thank you, Zach. And next, we want to hear from a few homeowners who have actually themselves installed heat pumps and wanted to share their experiences with you all as you think about making this switch. So I'll ask each of you to first just introduce yourself, where you live, and why you decided to get a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. And Wendy, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for joining today. My name is Wendy Mihalik. My husband and I live in a 70-year-old home in San Diego, California. That's climate zone 7 for those who are interested in climate zones. We came to the decision to put in heat pump technology in our home from an environmental perspective. We wanted to decarbonize. And we've been successful in doing that. As I was explaining earlier to some of the folks before this chat, we had our gas meter removed. So we no longer have a gas meter on our home. And I have a lot more to say, but I think we're just supposed to do our introduction right now, right? Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Wendy. And how about you, Emily?
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is Emily Kelly Fisher, and I live in Denver, Colorado. And we were lucky enough to install a heat pump and heat pump water heater in January of this year. We started looking into replacing just our gas furnace. That was the start. And it was honestly mostly practical. Our gas furnace was nearing the end of its life. And we also didn't have central cooling at the time. So we were using window AC units, and the idea that we could have one appliance that would both heat and cool was really appealing. And then in addition, the city of Denver started offering really generous rebates last summer that stacked on top of Xcel Energy's existing rebates for these electrification projects. So all of those sort of added up to, it makes sense to look into doing this now. And then it was also really appealing, the idea of eventually getting off gas in our home.
And how hard or easy was it for each of you to find a qualified contractor to work with for your heat pump?
So Emily, I'll take this one first and hand it off. We got 4 bids. And it took a while. That was out of a field of maybe 10 or 12 companies that we contacted and contractors. So 4 of them had experience with heat pumps. When we got those bids, they were all kind of about the same. We actually did both the HVAC and the water heater at the same time, because we wanted to get the economy of trying to electrify at once, specifically with the electrical circuits that were going to be added to these different areas. So we were able to find a company we selected based on their experience with heat pump hot water heaters. And as far as the HVAC they had been installing those as well. So that's how our selection ended up coming to play. So Emily.
Awesome. Yes, I really wish that I had Jane's tips before I started on this project, because I started cold calling HVAC contractors last summer and got pretty discouraged with people telling us that they didn't work with heat pumps, or hearing that I lived in Colorado and telling me I needed a gas furnace backup. And so then I was like, what is the point of installing a new gas furnace in addition to a heat pump? Why would I do this project? Anyway, so I eventually sort of lost steam, and then we read a Colorado Public Radio article about electrification, and Elephant Energy was quoted in the article. So my husband said, why don't you give them a call? And I did, and it was really exciting. They led by asking me what my goals for the project were. They were really knowledgeable about the rebates and tax credits that were available. They, as Zachary was saying, they did the calculation to determine whether we would need a backup heat source, taking into account the size of our home, how insulated we are by our neighbors, where we are located, not just Colorado, but that we're in downtown Denver. And it just clicked immediately, and we had a really good feeling that we were working with a vendor who shared our goals and visions for the project. So that was it. That we were happy once we found Element.
And how did each of you figure out what, type and size of system that you needed?
Well, again, from the contractors that bid, we discussed with them, we're in a 2-story, 2,600 square foot home. We wanted a zonal system. We took out the gas furnace and used the same ducts for the ducted heat pump. We quickly came to a decision on the actual hardware. We have a Daikin Fit, and we love it. It's a 5-ton, 17 SEER system. It's awesome. But I want to just back up a minute and say, part of our journey started with the solar that we installed over time. And we took 3 tranches on the solar to finally get all of the solar that we wanted on the house to truly electrify, including an electric vehicle. And that's why an electrification plan for people who are really interested in doing this for their home, it's not just one appliance, it's all of them. And it's getting all of the circuits involved, looking at your panel. I mean, doing 3 steps on a solar install is not wise. And if I had planned it out better from the start, we would have put what we needed in place and then gone from there. Same thing with the electrician. I mean, we had a hard time getting the HVAC people and the plumbing people to put the electrical in, not only for their systems, but also for the induction cooktop. They wouldn't touch it. So we still had to go out. So anyway, electrification plans for homeowners are really important. Think it through.
Yeah, I'll just quickly follow up on what Wendy said. Electrification plans are a great idea. We backed into our heat pump water heater because they pulled out the gas furnace and realized that the water heater was shot. So it can be done the other way. I just don't recommend it. But if something breaks, it's at least worth asking, can it be replaced with an electric appliance, even if you haven't done all of this legwork ahead of time? Because it can be done. It's just not always as easy.
Thanks for both of you. And we'll make sure to share with everyone our Environment America Research and Policy Center's Clean Energy Home Toolkit that includes some of these steps as well for thinking through, okay, is it the heat pump that you need to do? And what about solar? And what about your vehicle? And then how all these pieces fit together. So we'll make sure that folks get that. I'm curious, just how's it working? Like, are your heat pumps and heat pump water heaters doing what you need them to do?
Fantastic. I mean, no problems. The gas furnace was like, and this heat pump HVAC is just, it gets up, it stays, goes down. It's a variable system. It's wonderful. So it's not noisy. As far as the energy efficiency, I have to admit that with the solar, we are overkill. So we don't pay anything for any of our needs. We just get it all from the sun. But I wanted to add one other thing with the water heater. Our water heater was in a little closet outside, and we were concerned about airflow with the heat pump. And we contacted the manufacturer, who happened to be Bradford White, and they looked at the situation and said, you just put a louver in the door and you can put this heat pump in a smaller area and it will be fine. And we've had it in for 2 years and everything's great.
Yes, as Rob said, it's gotten really cold here in January and February, and we've been happy with our heat pump. We've stayed warm, and I'm a cold person, so I would not be shy about saying that I'm cold. It's been great.
That's great. And I know, Wendy, you're sharing, you hardly pay for utilities now since you also have solar. I'm curious, Emily, if you've noticed much of a difference in energy savings.
It's really hard to say because of how many things we changed all at once. We also swapped out the windows. So it's definitely possible that we will save money, but also we live in 600 square feet. So saving money was not our main goal. We already have a pretty low energy bill by nature of where we live and how our house is shaped. But it's possible we will. and that would be great.
Sure. And then have either of you found that it works better to, as you're trying to manage the heat pump, whether to turn it off all the way when you're not using it versus turning it down? How do you choose to manage your manage your system?
We turn it off. I mean, when we go to bed at night, we turn it off just because we conserve energy, and we don't want to use it at night. I don't like to have heat at night anyway, but we're in San Diego, not Colorado. So
Sure.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on where you are, and the heat pump is better at maintaining a constant temperature than it is at going down and up and warming your house back up. So yeah, I think it's a good thing to talk to your contractor about, like, what is the best, most efficient way to use this.
Sure. Good advice. And then do you have any other tips before we go to more general Q&A, tips for people that are interested in making the switch?
Well, I would just say, again, emphasize, plan it out, think it through. If you want to get that electric fireplace eventually, put in the circuit now, see that your box is adequate. Check it out. And also there's a lot more, there's opportunity to keep a 100-amp panel and still electrify your whole home. So there are ways that you can do that, and lots of new appliances coming on the market. So, and no, I just see in the chat, do I have batteries? No, I don't have batteries. We let the utility company be our battery storage for now.
Maybe that could be next.
Yeah, just to echo Wendy, especially because supply chains are still a little tight, and this is going to become more popular as the IRA credits are kicking in. It is good to plan ahead if you'd like to do this. If your furnace breaks and it's 18 degrees outside, it's not always possible to walk into Home Depot and buy a heat pump that you can pop in. You'll want to have done that sizing work ahead of time and found a contractor that you can work with. So if you think that your appliance is nearing the end of its life, it's a great idea to just start talking to contractors and start sizing out a system that you might want to replace it with, even if you're not ready to pull that trigger right away.
And I would just add one other note to Emily's comment, and that is, when you think about it, yes, temperature, cold, you want to get the heater right away, but most people won't want to live without hot water for more than 48 hours. So if you can put the electricity out to where your water heater will be switched out, you won't have to switch like with like. You can get off the gas.
Yeah. Thank you. And I do want to note too on the tax credits. So the current tax credits that exist for heat pumps, thanks to the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, you can get 30% of the cost of a heat pump covered up to $2,000 per year. That's the same amount you can get for a heat pump water heater. But again, it's just up to $2,000 per year. So depending on how many changes you want to make with your system, that's where having that electrification plan can really help you make the right call and make the most of these tax credits. If you're getting a geothermal heat pump, you can also get 30% of the cost covered. And on that one, there's not a cap on that tax credit. I want to now turn to Q&A from the audience. And so folks should see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A function where you can type in a question. And we'll ask these questions of both the, depending on the question, for the homeowners as well as the expert installers that we have here. I'm going to start with a question that is from Alana. And she asks about the minimum electricity service that one generally needs in order to run a central ducted heat system. This is someone who has an older home and is trying to figure out, how likely is it that people will need to upgrade their electrical system to get a heat pump?
I'm happy to take a stab at that. This is Rob from Elephant Energy. Unfortunately, like, it depends a little bit. Here in Boulder, we've recently fully electrified a townhome on a 100-amp circuit. And so that involves a little bit of electrical gymnastics with some simple switches that kind of toggle between loads, but they're a great tool. A heat pump will take between a 30-amp and a 60-amp circuit, and so you can kind of plan from there. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thanks, Rob.
This is Jane. Just want to add to that. So similarly, we've deployed in many homes with just 100 amp panel. It really does depend on, what the system is that you're putting in. There are, we use a heat pump, which is a 15 amp heat pump, and delivers all the heating and hot water. Depends on the needs of the home and depends on the size of the panel. So magic can be done sometimes.
Great. There's a few different questions about noise. Curious if people have thoughts on if different systems are noisier than others, and if they are, if there's ways to mitigate that, either by, putting covers on it, or otherwise dealing with noise.
So, at Harvest, we, to be honest, Harvest Thermal started when I was facing my very own cranky gas furnace and thinking this thing is not going to live very much longer. And my next system is going to be electric, and then struggling to find an electric system that really met our needs. And so we developed the Harvest Thermal system. But things like comfort and noise are paramount. And we're not really going to, people aren't going to transition from gas to electric if you're going to reduce comfort. And I think what we're hearing from Emily and Wendy, and certainly my experience, is that comfort can be enhanced by these electric systems. But it's no fun if you have a really noisy system. So there are different heat pumps out there. The one we use is 37 decibels. 37 decibels, you hardly hear it. I kind of put my hand near it to know if it's on. And it's outside my daughter's bedroom and no problem. But then some of them are maybe 60, 65. And so it's a requirement. If you don't have a space far away that you don't mind putting the heat pump, then ask for one with a low noise, low decibels. And then in the home, it's a question of the ductwork, how fast is the fan going to operate, and really making sure you're speaking to contractors who are good at working with duct and making sure that the flow is optimum. We tend to run our system at a gentle rate. As Emily was saying, we don't have a big setback at night, a little setback, but not too much, because we try and keep that constant temperature that avoids having to have a fan working too fast. So there are ways to do it, but I think getting the right contractor is key to that.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I'd like to throw in there that sound can be tricky. So the same piece of equipment and sound, it's so important that people are comfortable with the sound. But you could take a little mini split that, in general, they're known as being in the quieter, what Jane is talking about is extremely quiet and wonderful. But a little mini split outdoor unit might be in the low 60s for decibel sound rating, which is great. It's basically like the same as a box fan. So it'll run, and normally we could have a conversation right next to it. Nobody would notice. And I have people say, oh, well, can we turn it on and hear it? And I'm saying, looking at the grass blowing, it's on. But you can have that same thing, and it can be put in a little, then maybe there's a fence a few feet away from it, and it's got a wall behind and to the side, and all of a sudden you've created the sound chamber like the body of a guitar, and it will amplify, and it'll be right next to the window of the person that has a light sleeper. So it's just important to be aware of your equipment options and to think about the placement and the expectations.
Thanks. This is a question for Wendy. Someone's wondering, when you said you turned off your gas meter, does that mean you no longer pay a gas bill or no longer any utility bills? And how did that work?
Well, let's just say that SDG&E, our utility provider, knows where I live. So you can take the meter out, but if you want to remove the whole service, in my instance, it would have required a very extensive trenching operation that we decided not to do. So we simply cut off the gas before it entered our home. That means that in California, they are still going to charge me for all of those nuisance fees that happen, that every utility has. So I still get a tiny little bill, but it's not for gas because I don't use any gas. Also on the electric bill, I said that the utility was my battery. That's because we don't have batteries. So when we use energy at night, when our solar is not operating, we've actually kind of had a bank that we've created with our utility. So they still show us what we used, but we don't pay anything for it because we've got a credit because we overproduced during the day. I hope that's clear.
Great. Thank you. And we've got a couple different questions on floor heating. We have one guest who has geothermal and floor heating, wondering if heat pumps work with that. Someone else who has a different kind of floor heating. Can those systems work together? Can you have floor-based heating and a heat pump?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure Zach can add to this, but we deploy radiant floor systems and hot water with the same heat pump. Not a problem.
There are incredible heat pumps for radiant floor heating systems. Look at what Jane's company is doing, but you can, if you're heating with lower temperatures, you have a lot of options about producing that hot water to keep the space comfortable. So solar thermal can also be a nice ingredient in that scenario. Solar thermal with heat pumps, solar PV, solar electric with heat pumps. It can get really interesting.
Many options. There's another quick question here on whether there's an income limit for the tax credits. I can answer that one. The tax credits, the only limit is just, do you have tax liability that, where that credit would be useful to you? There will also be rebates rolled out later this year that are income dependent. So there are rebates that are aimed at helping lower and middle income homeowners switch to electric or more efficient appliances. Those will have income limits, and those will be managed by each state. So you can expect to probably hear from us once each state sets up their programs on what those programs look like. But for the tax credits, if you have tax liability, you can make use of the credit. I'll answer that. We've got a bunch of questions about heat pump water heaters as well, including are they tankless, and are they more or less efficient than an electric tankless water heater?
Yeah, I'm happy to take a first stab at that. And I see Emily nodding along. The heat pump water heaters, at least that we install, are all tanked, and they come in a number of different sizes. 50, 66, 80 gallon tanks are the primary ones we deal with here in Colorado. And just due to thermodynamics, they are not tankless. It takes a little bit longer for them to pull the heat from the outside air and put it into the water. So, the trade-off is it's very efficient. The UEF, kind of the efficiency metric on electric or gas tanks, is 0.87, 0.94, and heat pump water heaters is 3 point something. So they're very, very efficient, but they do heat the water a little bit slower, and they do expel a little bit of cold air. So those are kind of the two trade-offs that we talk to people about, but they do have tanks, and they are wildly efficient.
Great. There's a few other questions on the tax credits here, including, can you still get an IRS tax credit on the heat pump if your backup is a gas furnace? I see some of our experts nodding. It's my understanding that you can, but does others want to confirm?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Excellent. And then there's a few questions on, making that decision on whether you need backup heat from a non-electric source. I know Emily and Wendy, you both chose to not go that route, and seems like it works. I'm curious if, Rob, Zach, or Jane want to share any more on how people make that call.
It's that load calculation tells you how many BTUs, and BTU is about, you burn one wooden match, that'll give you about a BTU's worth of heat. So when we're talking about thousands of BTUs, I'm thinking about those red boxes of matches per hour. When we talk about tons, it harkens back to when people had a ton of ice delivered to their home. So the 12,000 matches will melt your ton of ice. But when we look at, a house needing 45,000 BTUs, then I'm looking at the performance charts of that particular heat pump that we're wanting to use. And it's, it might be rated to give, it's a 4-ton unit, so it should deliver 48,000 BTUs. And I need 45,000 on the coldest days expected temperatures. But you really have to get into the nitty-gritty and say, okay, well, what happens at my coldest temperature? And that coldest temperature might be 20 degrees, or it might be -10 degrees. And you have to see how the chart matches up. And then, if it doesn't match up, then you're going to have to make up that difference somehow. And that's your backup heat.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so first of all, yeah, absolutely. It's a question of what is the energy load needed by that home? And also the fact that, you might have on paper 45 kBTU heat pump capacity, but that heat pump sufficiency will go down for colder temperatures. So if you're trying to heat the home and it's -10, that heat pump may no longer be so efficient. So it's all about doing the right calculation. But at the end of the day, it's also, having a backup heat, and you want to find something which is cost effective, but that's going to run for a certain limited number of hours of the year, can really allow you to wean yourself off most of the gas or most of the fuel oil, or maybe it's an electric resistance backup that's going to work at cold temperatures. You can still deliver 90% of your heat using the heat pump, and then just have that backup, that electric resistance, as the enabler that has allowed your family to wean yourselves off gas. So I'm not a purist. I mean, if you're in an extreme climate, that might be the best thing to do, and it's still the cleanest thing to do for the planet.
And what advice do folks have for if people live in an area that sometimes has power outages? How does that affect the heat pump ability? Should they be thinking about getting generators, or are there other options there?
One of my initial response, when people ask me that, I often am pointing out to them that their furnace isn't going to work during that power outage either. So yeah, it's a thing.
A good point.
I would just say that if you have some form of thermal energy storage, that does give you a buffer. It's not going to last forever, but it gives you a buffer of maybe a day or two's worth of hot water, or or half a day's worth of heating, depending on what time of the year you're at. You still need a little battery to be able to run a fan, right? Or to be able to run a circulator pump, but not necessarily to run the heat pump. So that gives you a buffer. But at the end of the day, this is really about day in, day out heating and hot water. And the resilience is a different problem, and hopefully not too frequent a problem.
Certainly. We also have questions about, can you install a heat pump on a roof or under a house? And what about mobile homes? Are all of these places that you can install heat pumps?
My heat pump is on my roof, thanks to Rob.
My heat pump is under the house.
There we go.
And we've done all kinds of homes.
So
My roof is flat, I will say that.
Okay, great. On top, underneath, mobile homes, all good. Another question about the tax credits, which someone's asking, what does it mean that there's this $2,000 cap if your, heat pump costs more than that? Can you get the credit for multiple years? And my understanding is that that's not the case. It's just you can get up to that cap, and that's how much credit you're going to get. So the credit clearly is not it's not going to pay for the whole cost of the heat pump. You'll get up to that 2,000 or 30%, whichever is lower in the year that you install it. And that's your opportunity. There are some, as we heard from Emily, some cities or states have their own programs in addition. So you'll want to check and check with your contractors to see if they know of other resources. But that's how the federal credits will work.
I don't want to add I mean, that $2,000 heat pump tax credit is one of the better known, and obviously it's a very popular one, and it's really going to help this audience. But there are other things out there. There is a 30% tax credit for systems with thermal energy storage if it's a lease model. That's the project level. That's not just the heat pump, that's the whole project. So it's worthwhile looking into it. You know, when you look at the project you're doing, looking into what are the different options that you may be able to access. And of course, there are a slew of local incentives. You know, we've seen incentives stacking up to $15,000, $18,000, depending on where you're sitting and what equipment you're purchasing. So worthwhile doing your homework.
Great. Then this is a question that I don't know the answer to myself. The person comments that often putting in solar panels will increase the value of your home and the resale value, and thus it can also increase your taxes on that property. I'm curious if anyone has seen a change since putting heat pumps in, if it has that kind of effect or no. Looks like Wendy's shaking her head. Probably not.
No, it would increase our property value. I don't have any property tax impact from putting those panels up.
Great.
And I'm in a huge property tax state, let me tell you.
Indeed. Excellent. Well, we want to move towards wrapping up. I know we were able to answer many questions. We got well over 100 questions submitted. So we will do our best to, with ones that we weren't able to discuss here on today's webinar, we'll do our best to get answers out to people. And we'll be sharing some additional resources in the chat before we wrap up here. But first, I want to just give the opportunity for both our homeowners and our expert installers to share any final tips or advice for people as they start on their electrification journey. And anyone's welcome to go first.
Okay, I'll jump in. I saw a question in the chat about air conditioning. That's numero uno in Southern California. We use our heat pump in the summer primarily. You know, it's not a heating apparatus for us primarily, it's an air conditioner.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up by saying, if you can get a referral and find a vendor that you trust, who you trust to do that calculation and size your equipment right, that's really helpful when you're working on your project.
I'll throw in there that a lot of contractors have spent, HVAC contractors have dedicated a lot of time to combustion. And so, you know, if you wanted a very efficient, hyper efficient electric car and you went down to your local racetrack and asked the guy tinkering on his monster truck of, you know, the most efficient options, might not be a great fit, but there are those among us in the HVAC world that are advocating for this and trying to help people on this path.
Yeah, we're seeing a growing pool of contractors who, I mean, many of them, as you're saying, Zach, are, you know, that's what they've been doing most of their careers is the gas, but many of them are kind of, I think, like most of this audience, keen to move to the next solution, which is going to help fix the planet, and they want that to be part of their day jobs. And so we're seeing a number of contractors who do 80, 90, 100% of their work is about home electrification. The key is to find them. And so some of those resources, Efficiency First California, Green Work, or Find Green Work, and others, and I'm sure there are many others in across the states, they're great resources. Otherwise, just keep calling and check, have you done heat pumps before? And only take a contractor who has.
Yeah, I guess I would pile on that. You know, it's great to be part of the movement, and, you know, kind of be creative and, you know, keep reaching out, because there are solutions and there's great technology out there. These aren't the heat pumps of old. You know, they're going into cold environments and really working very, very well. So there can be many solutions out there for many different homes.
We have people on the phone here from San Diego, and yet we're also putting heat pumps in Vermont, right? So I think that says it all.
Maine is one of the largest adopters of heat pumps, and they seem pretty happy with them. Well, I want to say a big round of thanks for everyone who is joining us today and who's thinking about getting a heat pump, and a special thanks as well to to Emily and Wendy and Jane and Rob and Zachary for sharing your expertise and experience with us here today. Mackenzie on our team has shared some additional resources in the chat. There's 3 different articles from Environment America Research and Policy Center. First is just, should I get a heat pump, and the types of factors to consider. There's one about how the federal tax credits work and how you can use those. And then finally, what it's actually like to install a heat pump and go through that process. We will also share out the video recording of this webinar on our website. And again, we've kept track of all the questions you all have submitted, and we'll do our best to get more of those answered as well. Before we close here, I just want to say, replacing inefficient and fossil fuel burning heating and cooling systems with heat pumps will make a big difference, not just in our own homes, but in our quest for clean energy. But this switch alone isn't going to get us all the way to a future where we're powering our homes with 100% clean and renewable energy. We also need our states to lead. So I want to ask everyone here today to join us right now in asking your governor to seize this opportunity to go big on clean energy so that we can power our homes with 100% clean and renewable power. So Mackenzie will share a link in the chat where you can send a quick message to your governor, and you can also personalize it with your own story to, again, urge your governor to do everything they can to go big on clean energy, including, making sure those rebate programs, the other counterpart of this, get set up quickly and well so that more people can use it. Great. And so folks should see the short link in the slide as well as in the chat from Mackenzie. Okay. Thank you everyone so much. Go forth, electrify, tell us how it went. And thank you for doing your part on climate change.